What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my prediction on what the final top 25 playoff rankings will look like at the end of the season before we get to bowl season. This was after all the conference championship games, and maybe this will clear up some of those questions. I know a lot of you wondered why I had certain teams, where I had them in the playoff, and also in the New Year's Six Bowls, all of that. But this is what I think the top 25 would look like at the end of the season. Remember, keep in mind, this is not necessarily how I would rank the teams or how good I think the teams are going to be. It's simply what I think the committee would do based off of the results that I am predicting. So I wanted to include all the 8-4 teams, and so I actually went to a top 30, and we'll start here with those bottom teams. So we've got Louisville at number 30, Oregon State 29, UCF 28, Kentucky 27, Miami 26. So these teams would not be in those rankings, but they would be those next 5 teams out. Also, I have no group of 5 teams in these rankings because I just being honest here, I have not had time to really evaluate all the group of 5 teams, and I didn't want to guess. I like to have some actual research behind everything that I do. And so my focus really is just on the Power 5 teams. I know that may disappoint some of you, but I would probably have Tulane in there. You're looking at UTSA. I know I've looked at those 2 teams. I think they're both going to be really good. I know a lot of people high on Boise State. I don't know if there's any other teams out there that might have a chance, but I'm just focusing on the Power 5 teams here. And so there's Miami through Louisville here, teams that just miss out on the top 25, and it really comes down to resume. That's why these teams didn't quite make it in there. So let's get to 21 through 25. I've got Ole Miss at number 25 going 8-4, Texas Tech also at 8-4, number 24, and Kansas at number 23. Actually, the top 8-4 team, which seems kind of crazy, but if you look at what their resume would be, what they would have on the resume based off of my predictions, they would have a win over UCF, and we just saw them, a quality team. They'd have a win over Oklahoma, and they'd have a win over Texas Tech. So those are 3 really quality wins, and that's going to actually put them as the highest ranked 8-4 team. I don't know if the committee would go, maybe look at the name brands and everything. Maybe Kansas doesn't get in those rankings, but yeah, they're at 8-4. North Carolina, the bottom 9-3 team, because their resume wouldn't be super strong. Neither would Iowa's. And when I did these rankings, I really focused on the team's wins. I know sometimes the committee likes to look at your losses more than it's different every year. We all know about the inconsistencies with the playoff committee. But for these rankings, I really focused on the quality wins and didn't look at the losses too much. And so that's it, 21 through 25. Let's move on now. 16 through 20, we've got TCU at number 20, Kansas State at number 19, Oklahoma 18, Utah number 17, and Texas A&M number 16. All of these teams going 9-3. Texas A&M would have the best resume out of these 5 teams. The big one over Alabama. That's going to be their signature win. Utah, also a pretty good resume, going through a very tough Pac-12. I had Oklahoma, I think, beating Kansas State head-to-head, or beating TCU head-to-head, and Kansas State beating TCU. I don't think Oklahoma and Kansas State actually play this year. It's hard to keep track of everything. But yeah, no, Oklahoma plays Kansas, but they do not play Kansas State this year. And so I had them beating TCU, a little bit better resume than Kansas State. That's why you see 18 through 20 right there. And again, Texas A&M and Utah, I felt like had the best resumes out of these 9-3 teams, at least based off of those wins. So now that's pretty much going to do it for the 9-3 teams. We're going to get to the 2-loss teams now, and I probably had too many of them. You're looking at maybe 10, maybe 12 teams that normally finish with 2 losses in the regular season. I think I had 14. And yeah, there you go. 15 teams with 2 or fewer losses. And so now you're seeing, why Notre Dame's not in the top 10, why Penn State is not in a New Year's Six Bowl. It's because we just have way too many 10-2 teams, and it comes down to resumes, because I think that's what the committee would do. So Wisconsin at number 15, they do actually have a 3rd loss because I have them losing in the Big Ten championship game, but they dropped down to number 15. Penn State would actually have the weakest resume of all these 10-2 teams besides Wisconsin. And again, that's based off of wins, on quality wins. if you look at their resume, they'd have a win over Iowa, and that's a pretty solid win. But that's it. I mean, Illinois, Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan State. I'm not expecting any of those teams to have great years. In fact, most of them, I'm not even putting in a bowl game this year. So most of their wins are going to come against teams with losing records. West Virginia, same thing. Illinois would be their second best win, and that's why I have Penn State here. Now, last year, Penn State didn't really have much on their resume, but they had two really good losses with Ohio State and Michigan, and the committee ranked them pretty high. So it's very hard to say what the committee would do. I think Penn State is a top 10 team. I think Penn State's going to be a better team than Oregon, Tennessee, and Notre Dame. I really do. But based off of the resume, based off of their lack of quality wins, I think the committee would put them at number 14. And again, there's Oregon, Tennessee, Notre Dame. I think all these teams have a really, really good chance to get to a New Year's Six Bowl, but they're not all going to make it. So which teams get in, which teams don't? I've seen a lot of people expecting Tennessee to maybe take a step back, go maybe 9-3 this year. Some people think Oregon might go 9-3, maybe Notre Dame as well. And if that happened, Penn State obviously going to pass those teams. And really, that's probably more likely just looking at the history of college football. We don't normally have 10 or 15 teams that are 10-2 or better. So let's get into the top 10 now. If you watched my playoff video, you already saw this. But Washington, they're number 10, Clemson at 9, Alabama number 8, Texas number 7, USC number 6. And some of you wondering, how are Alabama, Clemson, Washington, how are they ahead of some of those 2-loss teams and they have 3 losses? Well, the committee doesn't really penalize teams for losing in their conference championship games unless they get blown out. We've seen that in the past. They're really not going to drop those teams. Maybe they drop a little bit, but they're not going to drop behind a team that doesn't play at all normally. So that's why I still have these teams ahead. I think they all have better resumes. Clemson would have that head-to-head win over Notre Dame, also have a win over Florida State. So they'd have a solid resume. Washington's resume is not bad. Alabama with a win over LSU. That's going to boost their resume. Also a win over Tennessee. So they've got a couple of really good wins in there. And that's why I've got Alabama at number 8. Texas, I had beating Alabama head-to-head. That's why they finish ahead of Alabama here. Also only finishing with 2 losses, as I had them winning their conference championship game. And USC winning the Pac-12 championship, going 11-2. And so then we go to the top 5, Florida State, Ohio State, LSU, Michigan, and Georgia. Again, LSU did not go to the SEC championship because I had them losing to Alabama. Alabama, I have losing 2 games, but only 1 conference game, losing to Texas A&M. I had their other loss coming to Texas, and so they win the head-to-head tiebreaker with LSU. That's why they are in the SEC championship and not LSU. Some of you were asking about that as well. And then Ohio State didn't make it in, but finishing at 11-1, they do get into the playoff despite not playing in the Big Ten championship. So if this happens, we're going to have 2 SEC teams, 2 Big Ten teams, and we're going to have 2 teams that did not play in their conference championship game. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of people unhappy if that does, in fact, happen. But that's how I see it playing out. Obviously, I could see a lot of other ways that it plays out. I think Florida State is definitely alive in this thing. You can never count out Alabama. If Penn State, my way too early pick to make the playoffs, if Penn State can beat Michigan or Ohio State, they might not have to go to the Big Ten championship, kind of follow the path that I have for Ohio State here. And maybe Penn State can get in. So I think there are a lot of teams that could possibly get in. But at the end of the day, this is my prediction: Georgia, Michigan, LSU, and Ohio State. We did a full playoff prediction video. If you missed that, went all the way through, picked my national champion and all of that in that video. So that is, again, how I think the playoff rankings are going to look at the end of the season. How do you think they're going to look? Feel free to give me your top 25 or just tell me what you change about mine. Give me all your thoughts down in the comments below. We'll have our preseason top 25 coming up in a couple of days. But first, tomorrow I'll have my bowl projections, where I'm going to do bowl projections for every Power 5 team and tell you which bowl games I think those teams are going to go to. So that's coming up tomorrow. Again, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.